Hello everybody, James here, and it is Ask Dutch Anything. Once again, a return after 2 months, for goodness sake. And let me tell you, when I checked the emails, the amount of emails was sort of staggering. So I've done my best, Dutch, to go through them and pick out some of the best ones. But, you know, we've got content for months just from the emails, quite frankly, with all the people writing in, well wishes as well as questions for you, saying they've donated to your GoFundMe. Once again, thank you everybody so much who donated or shared or sent nice thoughts or just anything. It was all enormously appreciated by Dutch and family. And the email itself is, of course, questionsfordutch@gmail.com. I've got to do the intro on Storytime with Dutch Mantell, so very quickly, we're on Pro Wrestling Tees. We're on Facebook. It's now WSI Wrestling Shoot Interviews now, so it's got all the stuff from WSI. Books and diplomas and Are you still doing the stuff, or are you taking a break from that, Dutch?
No, I'm still doing it, and I want to tell all the people who've ordered but are still awaiting the books or the diplomas that I hope they understand that this has been a very, very hectic time for me, and I'm getting to it as fast as I can. You're not forgotten. You've sent your money. Now you're waiting. You're waiting for your merchandise. It's on the way.
Yep. So it took you all this time to catch up with the last time you were sick.
Hey, it took me really. I had like I didn't get them all out, and they're still not all out. My bookkeeping is not all that good, so it could be better. But it took me at least a month to catch up on all the orders I've had through Christmas and all the way up. I didn't really start doing them till like March and April because I would get up in the morning. I was just worn out. I just couldn't do it. So, but anyway, I know who you are, and if I miss your orders, email me, and that'll remind me again, so I'll get right on it.
And that email is dirtydutchmantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, where you can get your books, your diplomas, and your hats eventually. At this point, don't expect them coming around the next week, quite frankly. They're not going to be here for Christmas, possibly.
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually. One more thing, of course, the Stevie Richards show I mentioned on Storytime with Dutch Mantell going for, it's doing really well. Like this last month, a few weeks have really been rocketing up. We got 3,000 subscribers in a week this past week. Yeah, really good, as we record this.
That's great.
Yeah, and, you know, better things are coming from that as well. So, on that note, questionsfordutch@gmail.com is where so many have written to submit your questions. It's the only way to get your questions on the show. I picked the best ones, and here is the first one out of the hundreds that we received in the 2 months since we were off. Chris says, it seemed like there was always a professional animosity between Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Might you know what begat this animosity?
Jealousy, basically. Bill came from Australia directly to Memphis. Jerry Jarrett signed his immigration papers, I guess, and he came in, and Lawler was a heel then, and I think they brought Bill in as a heel, and then they turned Lawler babyface, then they turned Bill babyface, and they're the two consistent faces of Memphis wrestling was Dundee and Lawler. And after a while, both of them were baby faces, and both of them had, I would think, professional jealousy of each other. And then Lawler actually bought into the territory. He became a co-owner with Jerry Jarrett. But yeah, the whole time I was there, if one of them was in the main event and the other one, you know, he displayed some jealous tendencies, and both of them, I've heard both of them say something about the other one. I don't know why I'm not the main event, or why they're going with him, or why we doing this. Of course, they were just talking to me. I had no answers for them anyway. But yeah, they're basically down deep. They don't really like each other at all. Now, they get along now because of those days are gone, but back in the day when both of them were really, you know, vying for that main event spot, yeah, there was a lot of jealousy between them.
Do you think on Bill's part, it's just, I'm just supposing here, but do you think, man, if Lawler wasn't booking half of the year, I could be just as over. I could be the face of Memphis like he was, but he's got a piece of the company. Do you think Bill had that confidence in himself that he could be the main star of this show?
Well, Bill, he booked Memphis for quite a while. Really, Memphis only did good with Jerry Jarrett's uh, overseeing it all. Jerry had a wider vision. Jerry Jarrett did. He had a wider vision of what wrestling should be, and Lawler had a tendency to do stupid, you know, crazy little spots and all. People showing up in boxes, and it would be more comedy than anything. A lot of time, not the whole show, but Lawler would put that in there, and Bill tended to be more toward the traditional wrestling side, and they both booked when it did really really well. But the time that I remember that it was doing so well was when Jerry Jarrett was booking, and Jerry Jarrett wasn't wrestling. You know, Jerry Jarrett was a wrestler too, but when he was booking, he wasn't wrestling. So all of his time and energy was spent on getting all these other guys, getting a crew of guys over, and he did. Because when I think I got there from Puerto Rico around the end of 1980, and from 81 to like 84, late 84, it did nothing but, sell out, not sell out business, but I saw a lot of sellouts in Memphis. And of course, they had a lot of great programs going on at the time. Me and Lawler was one of the big ones. And then as soon as me and Lawler finished up, which I didn't know we finished up, it's just when I wasn't in the main event the next week, I kind of got my I got my notice then. But and then what followed that was Andy Kaufman and Lawler, and that stretched on for another 6 months to a year. And I think after that, I think Andy died not very long after that.
Yeah, 84, 83, 84 he died, I believe.
Yeah, that was about it.
Next question, Armando. Hi, Dutch. Hearing you guys talking about Jacqueline in the last episode, so I suspect the last episode was 2 months ago, so I don't remember what we said, reminded me of her feud with Puerto Rico, in Puerto Rico, with La Tigresa. Is that my...
Yeah. Tigresa is like the feminine of the tiger.
When Jackie was known as Miss Texas USA. This must have been in the early to mid-90s in their infamous evening gown match in which Jackie wrestled half the match with one of her breasts exposed. Was this planned or was it an accident? And it's become infamous in Puerto Rico to the point that it's still featured at least once a year in WWC's Classic Match of the Week segment during the TV show. What's all this about then? I've never heard of this.
Well, I wasn't there during this period. I think this was before I got there. Or it may have, I don't know. But if she wrestled half a match with her breast exposed, I don't think that was planned. I think something went awry with her bra or her top or something. But Jackie didn't give a crap anyway. That is probably pound for pound one of the toughest women they've ever had in WWE. Because she came up the tough way, the hard way. And I remember when she was in Memphis, Lawler used to have matches not with her, but around her. And she would knock the hell out of Lawler. And she would tell Lawler, hit me back. And he would hit her pretty hard too. And she took some hellacious ass whippings out there, but never complained, because I think she actually liked it that way. And I don't know where she was from, but a great girl. She never bitched. She never moaned. If somebody hit her hard, she didn't give a crap. She'd get up and hit them back. And if she had a problem with somebody, she never brought it, or I never heard it. She never brought it to the dressing room. She was a true professional, in that regard, and I'm glad she made it to WWE.
Dallas, she's from.
Dallas, that's right.
That being said, I mean, with one breast exposed, but then when she got to the WWF, she was exposing them boobies a few times here, there, and everywhere, and bless her for it as well. As a young man watching, I was very appreciative. But that's someone who really doesn't care. She's just, yeah, look at these. I paid for them. They're awesome.
Well, a lot of those girls, if they have good breasts, some of them don't give a crap. I'll show them off anyway. They want to show them off. I guess Miss Jackie was like that, but and when she got to WW, what years was she there? Early 2000s?
She got there in 98, and she was there till probably the mid 2000s, yeah.
Yeah. But she fit right in. She was tough, she could work. And I mean, she was really good at what she did. Really good.
I bet that her and Bradshaw got on really well.
Her and what?
Jacqueline and Bradshaw, JBL. I bet them two got on like a house on fire.
I bet they did. I bet. And I think John would like her.
Also, a follow-up question. It would be nice to hear your experiences with La Tigresa, who worked for both WWC and IWA in Puerto Rico and is known as a pioneer and an inspiration to the current women's wrestling scene in Puerto Rico. Thank you. Any memories of her?
Oh, yeah. I took her down there and they weren't doing anything with her, just sending into the ring with some guy or whatever. But I put her with this other guy. Don't ask me to remember his name.
Goldberg.
But, yeah, Goldberg. I put him with her. And I put her out there and made her a part of the show. Oh, my God. I did a record rating with her and whoever she was with against one of Carlos's sons, I think Carlitos. We did a record rating on a Saturday, and I think we did a 22.5 or 22.6. So you think now a 2.0 rating is a 2.3 rating is great today. But they had the same rating system because we didn't have near enough people. But on the Puerto Rican scale of rating, we did a record, a 22.5 or something like that. And I forgot what it was. It was a tag match that she was in. It was her and her guy against, I think, Carlitos. And it sold out, by the way. Of course, that was our lead story the next week. That's what I liked about Puerto Rico. We did 1 week at a time. We didn't try to go 2 weeks at a time or 3 weeks at a time because you get lost. You got to play with what's hot. So I led with that and put it on the show. And a lot of people told me, don't put what you've charged the people to see on a Saturday night. Don't put that back on TV. I said, why not? Well, just don't do it. I said, I don't know the reason, but that's my main deal. That's why they came. So if they came, surely they would watch a show to see the match. Maybe they on the other side of the island, maybe. Let's show it to them. And I would work an angle out of it, and she was good. She was really, really good. And a nice girl, too.
The only people who've got a photo of her with men is one called El Invader, who's got a mask on. I suspect like Invader. Or one with Glenn Jacobs, Kane. But I don't think it was her. She managed him either.
No, I don't think so.
Can't find it for now. I'm sure someone hopefully will write in the comments who it was. Next question. Omaha. Hey, Dutch. Have I just written Omaha and not written the guy's name? I don't know. Anyway, the state of Omaha. There's a lot of CWA Memphis on YouTube. What would be a good year or years to start with to the best of your knowledge? And a side question, did you ever wrestle Freddie Krueger or Jason lookalikes that I've only seen so far in 1989?
Yes, I did wrestle them. Freddie Krueger was Tommy Gilbert Sr.
Mm.
That's who that was. And he took that gimmick. He looked more like Jason than Jason did. That's Eddie Gilbert's father. He did a great job of that. They put the fingers on and the hat, and they were about I don't know how big the original character was supposed to be, but Tommy fit it. So they did some great stuff. What was the other one? Freddy Krueger?
Amazingly, there's another Jason and Freddy Krueger question right after that, but I'll ask it in a second. He said, if you're going to start on CWA Memphis, what year should you start watching for, real good flavour?
79 to 80 and up to 84. I would say 81 to 84. That was when business was red hot. And that's when we kept hearing, oh, Vince is going to expand. Vince is going to expand. Vince is going to take over all the TVs, which is what he was doing. And slowly we would watch, it's like, boom, this territory can't make it no more because Vince took their TV. But Vince took their TV because he started paying for TV. And where the other company was paying the TV station to run the show, Vince come in on top of them, took the same spot and started paying the TV to air WWF programming in the place of the local programming. And then like Kansas City was the first one to go down. I think Knoxville was already gone, so Smoky Mountain got there. That left. Continental was folding up. Florida was folding up. So eventually it was down to two original territories, which I worked the most in my career was Memphis and Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico, their product never really took off there. Now they can go there now and do business, but back then they would go there and they would go to the big building that seats 20,000. They may do 3,000 people. So it was a loser for them, but I don't know why Puerto Rico didn't take off more like it did in the States. But it's again a different culture, different language, and everything else. But Freddy Krueger, I don't know who that was.
Hang on, which one? Because you said Freddy Krueger was Tommy Gilbert. Did you mean he was Jason the Terrible?
Oh, I'm sorry, Freddy Krueger was Tommy Gilbert. Jason the Terrible was a mishmash. Whoever was that was a big guy that came in there, they would, and I don't even remember his name. He wasn't there that long anyway.
Well, amazingly, Dorothy has written and says, hey guys, my grandfather showed me an old VHS tape of matches from World Wrestling Council, including 2 with Dutch Mantell in tag team action. I wanted to ask, did Dutch ever wrestle Carl Moffat, a.k.a. Jason the Terrible? Do you have any stories about this man or his gimmick? Thanks again. Now, Carl Moffat was a mainstay in the later version of Stampede Wrestling when that came back in the late 80s.
Carl Moffat, I remember the name. I don't remember having, and I don't even know if I was in Puerto Rico with him. I don't know where I would have met him. So I'm very unfamiliar. I know the name. I know the character he played, but I don't remember any personal interactions with him. But I hate to say this, but I don't remember him. Of course, I don't remember a lot of things, but usually I remember people. But I don't think I had any matches with him at all.
Next question. Joe from Boston says, hello guys, I love the show, keep up the good work. Well, we're just picking up the good work, I guess. I was going through old wrestling matches on YouTube and came across some of Ray Washington Taylor Jr., better known by his wrestling name, the Big Boss Man, and was wondering if Dutch had any good stories on him. I am asking because I mainly remember watching him as a child and being terrified of him. Thanks, and keep up the good work. So, any stories about Boss Man? But he wasn't Boss Man when he first met him. He would have been Big Bubba Rogers, surely.
Yep, that's who he was. I was in Mid-Atlantic. I remember when I went in, I think he was, now I got to remember again. I may have had 1 or 2 matches with him, not very memorable. He just beat the crap out of me and beat me, which was okay. He didn't kill me, and I'm trying to remember, when was he with Cornette? That was in WCW, right?
Yeah, Mid-Atlantic,
right.
Yeah, so we're talking, 86, around that when he was introduced. Yeah. He was a jobber first, I believe. He took a quick loss to Tully Blanchard, and he did he took the slingshot vertical suplex from Tully Blanchard, so I think that's when Dusty saw him and think, this guy's really good, I mean, considering his size. Then he got repackaged.
He's a Georgia boy, and he wasn't a big talker, nice guy, and that's what I always liked about Dusty. Dusty would look at a talent that he wasn't doing anything with, and he would think about what can I do with this guy to help him. So what he did, he ended up putting him with Cornette and the Midnight Express. And one of the main things I saw, they had a scaffold match in the Omni in Atlanta and on their big show. And it ended up when Cornette was the only one down there, and I think they were going against the Road Warriors. And they caught Cornette on top of the ladder by himself. Man, this place was going nuts. They hated Cornette, and they crawled up the ladder, and they stood there. Cornette had nowhere to go this way. He couldn't go this way. He couldn't go this way. He was on the ladder, and then he looked down. Oh, my God. And Cornette has a fear of heights. He hates that. So they had the deal to where he was going to try to hang on and try to get to the ladder to go up, but he couldn't quite get over there. And I think they stomped his hands, and finally, and this scaffold was high. It really was. I don't want to say 20 feet, but maybe 15 to 20. So and he turned it loose, he fell. Now this is turned into a Cornette story. That's what blew his knee out. And I remember Big Boss Man was trying to catch him. And when he come down, he backed up. He said, "Hey, I can't catch that guy. He'll kill me." And Cornette hit. Oh my God! And you could tell he hurt his knee or hurt his leg. And I remember Big Bubba picking him up, carrying him back to the dressing room. The other Midnight Express, they'd already gone.
Did you travel much with Big Bubba? Because I know you traveled with the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette, but did you do much traveling with Bubba?
Didn't do any traveling with Bubba. See, when you travel with the guys that it becomes like and back in the day, it was, you were all leaving from the same place. Most of the guys were driving anyway. And I have been in a few cars with the Midnight and Jimmy, not many, but a few, very entertaining. Because Jimmy and Dennis was a good talker too when you got him going, but Cornette would just ask him anything. He could make a 3-hour trip seem like 45 minutes because his stories were that good, or whatever he was talking about was that good. And I've known Jimmy since he was probably 15, 16. I actually known him. I'd seen him around the matches in Louisville. He would come with his mother, and he was a huge wrestling fan anyway. And his mother always helped Jerry Jarrett's mother. This town belonged to actually Jerry Jarrett's mother. She promoted it. And Cornette's mother, I can't remember her first name now, and they would sell tickets. But I tell you what, they were two older ladies watching you, and you didn't want to do anything that they didn't approve of because they would do that mothering deal over you and would make you feel sorry you did something.
Thelma.
Beautiful lady. Nice lady.
Next question. Sam from Foul River, Alabama. Dutch, in an interview, Percy Pringle / Paul Bearer / Bill Moody said that things got so bad in World Class in 1990 that he almost quit the business. He had a wife and 2 young children to provide for, and the last straw was his car being repossessed by the bank. Did Dutch ever get to a similar place in his career, or actually leave the business temporarily for financial reasons, only to return when business picks back up? Keep up the good work.
Did I leave the business? No, the business left me. Because when Vince McMahon, the bastard, when he put all these mom and pops, I call them mom and pops, territories out of business, there was nowhere to work. if you're in the wrestling business, wouldn't you seek out a wrestling company somewhere to try to go to work for? But see, at the time, he ran, and I already covered this. At one point, he ran every company out of business except Memphis and Puerto Rico. All the rest of them were gone. And you could go and try to work independents, but the independents weren't paying any money at all. So it was very, very difficult. And that was a dead period from the late 80s to probably the whole 90s, really, except for Smoky Mountain. There was nowhere to work. And I worked them all, but after a while, your finances would get low. Yes. And if you'd saved any money, you're going to go through it unless you go get a regular job. And that didn't pay any money either, because when you're used to a certain standard of living and you can't keep that up, that's a hard thing to accept. But yes, I can see Paul Bearer having to get his car repossessed because he didn't make the payments on time. I was making no money at all. Oh yeah, I've seen that.
When by the time you're an established star, so I'm sort of imagining the 90s really, and you were a name in the business, how low of a single payment would you accept when the business was absolutely dying? So I'm talking probably like the early 90s after you left WCW. Like, how much were people paying that you would actually accept?
Oh, nothing. It was like $100 or less. And I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not making this long ass trip for $100. I'm not doing it. And well, it's all I can afford. I said, well, okay, call somebody else, I guess. I mean, when you set when you set a mark, a watermark, one promoter will tell another promoter, and you're not going to rise. So it was a bad time. Now, of course, the huge stars that had made WWF TV, of course, they could ask for more but the only way I could ask for more money is places that I'd been, and it would be like Alabama and Tennessee, and they're notoriously they just didn't pay. Of course, they didn't draw either. An independent show in Tennessee would draw 50 people. So, and it was just a bad time for the whole business. It really was.
Next question. Craft Chest says, some time ago, Scott Steiner endured a life-threatening injury to his sternum in which he was allegedly compelled to get the chest tattoo. Is there any truth to this? Since Dutch, you spent so much time there, did you hear anything about this? There, I believe he means Puerto Rico. Did you ever encounter Scott Steiner before? So, I mean, you can't have failed to have noticed the sort of sunken portion of the chest of Scott Steiner, especially when he went to TNA. Did you ever find out what that was about?
No, never did. But I've known Scott since he actually broke into business. They brought him to Memphis, greener than hell, and stiffer than hell. But he was a great amateur wrestler, because when you looked at him, you knew not to mess with him. You know he could just take you and suplex you all over the place. And if Scott liked you, he would give you everything. But if he didn't like you, he wouldn't do it. I've seen him go in the ring with guys that he was. What happened here?
Sorry, he was following your cigar for some reason. Do carry on.
I know.
The camera's just as sick as Dutch has been as well.
No kidding.
It's still playing up.
The camera's missed me, haven't you? Hell yeah. What if the camera nodded his head up and down, like you're talking to me?
Oh, he won't do anything you'd want it to do. I know that.
Scott learned to work in Memphis, and he turned out. Rick wasn't there. I think Rick was still in Atlanta, but all Memphis was doing was getting Scott ready to go join his brother. He was just getting experience. But whatever match I had with him, he didn't hurt me. Well, then again, he liked me. You don't hurt the people you like, and he turned out to be a great talent in the ring. And then again, you've seen him on some tapes. When he didn't like somebody, he didn't work with them too much. And he'd be a little bit stiff, but good guy and kind of quiet too, because he always thought I was funny and, he'd be interested in him and he'd laugh. And so, but I had a little bit of a hand in his early development, but now he's doing really good. I think he has a Shoney's now,
Yeah, he
or
did at one point, yeah.
several Shoney's now, I think. So he's doing really, really well, and my hats off to him.
You just said you helped in his development. How so?
Well, he was just starting. See, when we would have a match, I would go in there and I would help him. I said, okay, we'll do this and we'll do that. But see, he was too inexperienced to try to call anything. And I would work with him. And I'd have him give me the slam and I'd sell it and then I'd give him something else. But see, the rule of thumb was the better you make your opponent look, and it wasn't hard to make him look good because he looked the part. He looked like $1 million. The better you make him look, and then you come out on top and you beat him, now you beat somebody. You beat somebody who really almost took you to your limit, and you come out on top. And I think he would have been ready for the main event scene after about 6 months, 8 months of training.
So he had that much promise even then?
Oh, yeah. When he would get in the ring, his body gave him the promise. Plus, he was an athlete too. Yes, when he got in the ring, the people knew if he walked into I keep using 7-Eleven, but a convenience store, and he stood there, you knew he was something. Of course, immediately you think he's a bodybuilder because he was all jacked up, or he was a football player, or he was something, or a wrestler. And because when you looked at him, see that's part of the thing the wrestler has to do. The wrestler has to look the part too. The wrestler's got to look like, and you've seen people. I say sometimes when you see a guy, say he's 50 feet from you, and he looks intimidating at 50 feet. Well, you're going to give him a wide berth. You're going to get out of his way because he looked the part, and if he had to, he could act the part too. So, and a lot of wrestlers just went off appearance mostly. A lot of them did. They weren't all cut up. They just looked like they were just mean ass bastards, and that's part of the story.
I'm just looking at some of the people who were in Memphis in 1988. Some names: Scott Levy. Who's that?
Raven.
Bob Holly was in at the same time.
Yep.
So there's some really big names in the future that sort of populated Memphis in 1988.
You remember when I was talking about Vince started his developmental league when he could have been subsidizing Memphis and sending them there. They would have TV every week. They would make the trips like everybody else. They would learn on-the-job training. And I think Vince may have saved some money. Not that money was an issue, but there was several of the smaller territories that he could have helped out. And Sid Vicious came through there.
Mm-hmm.
Bruno came through there.
Kurt Hennig, I know he was already established by that point, but Scott Steiner wrestled Kurt Hennig in a very, very early match on a non-house show, I think.
Yep.
So, yeah. Brian Adams. Brian Lee.
Yep, Brian Lee.
Yeah. The
Bruise Brothers were there. I mean, of course, Jeff Jarrett came through there. Everybody knows that. But we were just talking about Miss Jackie back on our regular show. She came through there. A lot of them came through there because it was basically, and I think Vince viewed Memphis as a starter promotion, especially for talent. And I don't know what got into him that he wanted to start his own developmental league, but he ended up, I think he had one in Memphis one time, and that didn't work out for some reason.
It's like Randy Hales and Power Pro Wrestling or something like that, wasn't it? And they sent quite a few of the WWF guys down
It
there.
was, I think it was even before that.
Yeah.
It really was. But that's where they went. That's when, if the whole business had been, say, like it was when Vince started to take over, if the business had stayed like that with the little territories here, 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 and here, they could feed Atlanta or WCW and WWE indefinitely. They just come in and pick who they want and take them and see what they can do with them.
Bringing it back to Scott Steiner, so you knew him when he was just breaking into the business, or a year or two experience. How did he change by the time you knew him in TNA? Was he more brash? Was he more bold? Or was he actually just the same guy mostly? Quite quiet.
Oh, he was the same guy to me, but he didn't give a crap. He'd go back and he'd be in the rest of them. I ain't doing this, I ain't doing that, and blah blah. Most of it was just playing around, but they treated him very good in TNA when I was there. And he was treated like, and they paid him good money. I know that because Dixie Carter was the forerunner of Tony Khan. She had the money. Tony pays a lot more money than she paid, but things are different. But yeah, he was good in TNA. Great. I remember one time we had him do the commentator role. Oh my God. He was hilarious. So it's like they had taken over the show and we fired our two announcers and that, I forgot who they put in on the other one. It was Scott Steiner and somebody else.
Wasn't Nash or Booker T, was it?
Well, Booker T was already there, I think. And Nash did it for a while too. But turning Nash loose on an open mic, he's hilarious. He's funny just to sit down and talk to. He really is. But made a lot of trips to that guy.
Just so you know, he suffered a chest injury which partially caused the tear, and then it got a lot worse when he had I think he endured a torn trachea down in Puerto Rico, and basically
that's what.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't there when that happened. I think Jeff was there. He'd come in for a shot.
This is something I'm pulling out my head from years ago.
Yeah, I want to say something. The medical system in Puerto Rico is nowhere near than it is in the United States. He could have died from that. And I'm not familiar with how many days or how bad it was, but I'm thinking he should consider himself lucky that he survived it. Because Puerto Rico it's not a main U.S. destination. So I think the medical system would be, and I don't know when this happened. If it happened on a Saturday night, I don't even know how he got into the emergency room. Because the emergency rooms in one of the two big hospitals in Puerto Rico on a Saturday night, they're full. People getting cut, people getting shot, people getting hit in the head. It was crime down there was rampant. So they had a lot of violence, and you didn't go out on the street at 8 o'clock at night either. You went back in your little cubby hole and stayed there. But I'm glad he survived, and it was a long time before he even attempted to get back in wrestling.
He did an interview with Chael Sonnen quite a few years ago where he explained the entire injury. So if you can somehow hunt that down, I don't even know if it's available still, but that explains it all. We shall move on. Zweller writes in and says, Tyson Tomko, or Tomko in TNA, seemed like he could have been a star. He had the looks, but maybe wasn't good at promos. What was Tomko like backstage? If you had any personal interaction with him, it'd be nice to know. As always, great show. Looking forward to more episodes.
When I met Tomko in TNA, yeah, he had the look. He had the size. But, and I think he's even said this too, he had a substance problem. He had a pill problem, I think. And he finally had to end up going to rehab to do something about that. But as far as being wild and rambunctious, he wasn't that. He was actually much, much quieter than you thought he would be. Because he was about 6'4", about 260, maybe more, maybe right in there. But big, impressive looking guy. And I wasn't impressed with his interviews, but that's when I met him. And I think where did he come from when he went to TNA? WWF?
Yeah, he was with WWE for a little while, in fact. Raw for 3 years. Was he with Christian? Yeah, he was I think he was Christian's bodyguard at the time, and I think he would continue to be that in TNA for a while.
Mm-hmm. But no wild stories about him, not that I remember.
I'm going to give you one, actually. In a sad story, this is 2011. In a sad story, TMZ is reporting that former WWE and TNA wrestler Travis Tyson Tomko was arrested in St. Augustine, Florida yesterday, this is in 2011, on robbery charges. He essentially robbed a CVS pharmacy of oxycodone, then went into a Chili's restaurant, entered the Chili's restroom, and prepared his score and injected it. Then on Saturday, Tomko walked into the same pharmacy claiming he had lost his prescription of oxycodone and asked if anyone had turned it in. He left when the pharmacist told him that nobody had, only to return on Sunday and ask if they could advance him some pills. He was refused and left. Yesterday, he went back to the same pharmacist, I think, for all 15, and returned and asked the pharmacist for all of the 15 and 30 milligram oxycodone pills he had. Tomko then threatened the pharmacist, saying, "Don't make me hurt you," while he had in his hand and his shirt something pointing something, presumably pretending to have a gun. Upon being threatened, the pharmacist retrieved 3 bottles of oxycodone from a safe container, and essentially he was arrested shortly afterwards. So, man,
I would say he had oxy. That's one of the strongest opiates you can get, oxycodone. So I would say he had a problem with it, and what happened? Was he sentenced in that or what?
I can find out in a second. While I find that out, I'll give you my opinion. I can't find it. Very briefly, I'll give you my opinion, is that he always looked to me, he looked like just a big bouncer who was just put into WWE. He didn't look like a sort of, because he's like the size of a Brock Lesnar almost, he's a huge dude, a bodybuilder and all that kind of thing, like interesting look and everything, but he didn't have anything beyond that for me. I don't know how you feel about that, but as a viewer, I just thought, well, he's just another big guy. He was just a guy.
Yeah. That's exactly the way he was perceived, is the way I perceived him. I mean, if I perceive him as a talent, I don't know what's there that I can build on. He doesn't have an overpowering personality, an overpowering promo. He has a body that's big enough and good looking enough that where he could fit the role. But, and we've said 100 times, it's perception and story. I'm going to add perception in there. And he was a tough looking guy, but he just never got rolling in TNA. And the reason being is I never saw anything that was marketable about him in a top spot. You could use him underneath with something, and if you'd had time to maybe get to know, if I had time maybe to get to know him and tell a story with him, he would have done a lot better.
Tyson Tomko would be released from jail on like $7,500 bond, and then he entered WWE-sponsored rehab. I believe he's in a lot better place now. He would leave the wrestling business for 3 years, something like that, and then wrestle on the independent circuit until 2016 when he retired. Next question. Jamie from Morganton. Where's Morganton?
Well, according to what state you're in, it could be Kentucky, it could be North Carolina, it could be Indiana. There's a lot of Morgantons out there, or Morgantowns, yeah.
Does Dutch have any good stories or memories of Skandar Akbar? Devastation Inc. seems to be a forgotten stable. Have we ever talked about Skandar Akbar here?
No, but I used to live with him. We were roommates. And that Skandar, well, let me tell you, when I started wrestling, my buddy, Doug, nobody remembers him now, but he was about 400 pounds and about 6'5", 6'6". And they put a mask on him in Atlanta. Tom Ernesto did, the assassin, and was using him down there as, generic Mr. X or X. And Tom Ernesto was the booker. And on Mondays, this don't have anything to do with Skandar, but I'll tell you how I got with Skandar. We had two towns, was Augusta, Georgia, and Valdosta, Georgia. two different cities in Georgia. We ran 2 nights, 2 towns a night. And I was in Georgia, and Doug, my friend, was in Valdosta. So I said, I'll see you tomorrow. He said, okay. So I left to go to Augusta. He left to go to Valdosta. And Valdosta is a long way. It's way down. You got to get on, you go to an I-75, then you get on something else or another interstate. I got to Augusta, and somebody come to get me in the dressing room. They said, you got to call up here at the office. Now, you don't get calls like that in wrestling. Something big had happened. And I got down there to the office, and they said, I picked the phone up, and it was Tom Ernesto. And he said, well, I don't know how to tell you this. But he says, he called him Kissy, Doug Scoggins. He was on his way to Valdosta. He had an accident, and he got killed. And I had known him before. I'd known him like 4 years before, or 5 years before I got to Atlanta, Georgia. Said he had an accident and he got killed. So now I got to go back that night, knowing he's never coming back in that apartment. And it was an odd feeling. And I had just seen him that afternoon, but that's what life does to you. So, and after I went to his funeral, me and Tom and Jody Hamilton and all the wrestlers went to his funeral. It was in Elberton, Georgia. That's where he was from. And we all went up there to the funeral. So then you got to go back to work. So when I went back, and then the question is about Skandar Akbar.
Mm-hmm.
He came in and he was looking for a place to stay, and he come and asked me. He says, he told me he was sorry about my friend, and he says, are you sharing your apartment? And I had another bed. I mean, the apartment was basically still in Doug's name. I was just staying there and sharing the rent. The rent was, you know what the rent was back then?
Go on.
$175 a month, fully furnished. That's with the refrigerator, stove, beds, couches. Didn't have a TV, table, dining table, and that's how much it was. They were charging. So yeah, I let Skandar stay in my apartment for, I don't know, whatever he was going to be there. And we split the rent. So I was paying like $85 a month. He was paying $85 a month. Oh, that, power included, water included. It was a great deal. But I learned more from that guy, just riding with him and listening to him. And he's funny as hell anyway. And he'd always have a cigar. He said, oh, yeah. And he'd always show me his money. He'd always open up like his billfold, and he'd show me nothing but $100 bills. So, but he taught me a lot about wrestling, because he would go with me, and we would talk wrestling history on the way down. But on the way back, he was like having a tutor that went with you, because he would go out every night. He would watch my match, and then we would going back that night, he would critique me on what I did right, what I did wrong, take more time, slow down a little bit. But at the time, I was in a program with Ted Oates, and we were two young guys. We were just flying all over the ring. Of course, his main thing is slow down, let the people let it breathe. He called it, let it breathe. But we were too stupid to let it breathe. No, we didn't want to let it breathe. We just kept flying around. And finally, he just said, "Okay, do what you want." People seem to be enjoying it. So, but he would, and he gave me a lot of history about wrestling, when he started, and great guy. I really appreciated Skandar a lot. He's passed away now, right?
Yeah. He
good guy.
He sort of basically retires almost from full-time wrestling by the end of the 1970s, I guess now. And then, it would transition into a manager, get back in the ring throughout the 80s, as and when, in Dallas and Mid-South and wherever else he was needed. But how was he as a manager? Because I don't know too much about him, but I think he's one of those, he's one of those unsung heroes, really.
Skandar Akbar is a Islamic name, I think. And he wore the big, the thing and the thing on the head. I don't know what they call that, but he was like an Arab, like a Muslim. And he would take that to the ring, and he wasn't really Muslim. I guess he was Christian, but he would say some things over something, and all the people hated him. And one reason he wore that shawl, or whatever you call that, was the same reason I heard that Roddy Piper wore his leather jacket, to keep knives. It was maybe deflect the knives or some stuff, or he would have something over his arms, he could block it. But they didn't like him at all. And I think he was in Mid-South when I went there. I went there in the mid-'80s. I think Skandar Akbar, didn't he manage Kamala?
He managed Kareem Muhammad, Kamala. Who else was he with? Yeah, those two. But yeah, he did manage Kamala. He also wrestled Jim Duggan in a singles match in the Municipal Auditorium in Shreveport, Louisiana in '85.
That Shreveport Auditorium, I was really happy to actually having worked in there. I wonder, is that building still standing? That's when the original Grand Ole Opry started. It was called the Louisiana Hayride. They had a show there that went for years and years and years from the stage of Shreveport Auditorium called the Louisiana Hayride, which was a forerunner to the Grand Ole Opry. And they would have and it was a radio show late at night too. But an old building.
I'll tell you exactly how old it was. 1929 it was built, 95 years old, and in 2008 designated a National Historical Landmark.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Still going strong.
Really?
Yeah.
I enjoyed being in that building, and I was glad that I can say that I worked inside that building. I never worked inside the old Opry in Nashville, but it was a lot bigger than the Louisiana Hayride in Shreveport. But it was old, and I've been inside the building, but very historical.
We're going to end on this question, and this is the
maybe I don't want it to end.
Oh, I'm as I always say, I'm hungry, so it must end after this.
Oh, okay.
On that basis, this is the controversial question, Dutch, and I don't know anything about this other than that quite a few people wrote this in, so I don't know if a YouTube channel posted a clip or whatever else it was, or it's just coincidence. But Andrew, Nathan, a couple of other people wrote in and said, in an old RF video shoot interview with Bill Watts mentioned that Dutch was an okay booker, but swindled him out of a lot of money. Not sure if Dutch has addressed this. What's the story here?
Well, I will address this. First of all, he had me confused with Ken Mantell. Talking about I swindled him out of a lot of money. why don't we reverse that? I think Bill swindled me out of a lot of money, as he did a lot of other guys, because Bill wasn't noted for his payoffs. He wasn't noted for that. He was talking about Ken Mantell, because he wasn't talking about Dutch Mantell. He got me confused. Bill's older than I am, so I'll give him that little bit of a slip of a afterthought. But yeah, I read that and I went, I swindled him out of money? My God. So, but he was talking about Ken Mantell and not me. And Ken Mantell was a pretty decent booker, but I think I was better than he was. So,
Did he swindle you out of money?
who?
You. Ken Mantell, did he swindle your plastic brother Dutch Mantell out of money?
No.
Did you ever wrestle him? Did you ever work for him? Did you ever work for each other?
No, I wrestled him though.
Huh.
I wrestled him in Georgia once. I remember that. And it was just a match. It was nothing outstanding. I mean, when you first lock up with a guy, you can tell right then, if there's any chemistry at all. And I felt zero chemistry with Ken Mantell. Of course, I didn't wrestle him as Dutch Mantell. I wrestled him as my real name, Wayne Cowan, which is spelled wrong. And I wrestled him in Georgia, and we just had an okay match. We was about third on the card, and we did the match, and I put him over, and we left.
Before you were even Chris Gallagher, which is such a weird random name to just like be for a year or something, I always found.
Well, that was just an independent name. And probably Chris Gallagher had 2 matches. Not many matches.
There's one with George Goulas that we watched as well. And you were Chris Gallagher in that.
Oh my God. I'm going to tell you, I think George Goulas can make Ric Flair look bad. Horribly. He can make him look bad just selling. And I will stand by my earlier statement. I think George Goulas is the worst professional wrestler I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of bad ones, but he was the worst.
On that basis, a declaration that you did not swindle Bill Watts out of money and that George Goulas remains the worst wrestler of all time. All is right with the world, and Ask Dutch Anything is back. We will see you again. Story time with Dutch Mantell this Friday. And one more time, the email is questionsfordutch@gmail.com if you want your question added to next week's format, and only the best get through. And you'll be fighting a lot of a backlog of questions as well, so you better make sure it's a good one.
That was the word I was thinking of, the backlog. You got to fight the backlog.
Yeah, we've got to wade through. Get the fishing waders on, wade through the backlog of questions as well. So, but please keep them coming, questions for Dutch at gmail.com. Having said that, once again, we said it on Storytime. Thank you so much for donating to Dutch's GoFundMe. He thanked you as well. And
yes.
There's one more thing to add, Dutch, and that is we the people.
We the people. We got to say that on cue.
We can't. We can't, though, because we've got a half-second difference. So if we do it, it'll just sound like an echo.
Really?
You count it down, and I'll do it with you, and then you listen back to it, and I'll just do it with you. Okay?
3, 2, 1.
We the people.
Oh yeah, you do have a.
Yeah. But because you counted it, it sounds right on this. I've just realised.
Oh really?
Okay, so I'll count it down, and then you do it, and okay. So 3, 2, 1. We the people.
The people.
There you go. I'm sorry you had to go through that, everybody. We'll see you again on Friday.
See ya.